we're going to finish up the book of Ruth today. First of all, bring these out so everybody knows where we are. We got through some pretty interesting stuff last week. Let's put it that way. So the first question is, there was that story about the threshing floor. That I know it caught your interest. It all caught your interest, okay? The story of the threshing floor all caught everybody perked up. Ooh. Remember, the threshing floor was, excuse me, a place in the town where everybody bought their crops, and that's where they, took the grain out from the rest of it. And it was a public place because everybody that owned crops had to be in there to make sure that nobody stole their pile. So what did Ruth do with all these people around? Well, yeah. What did Naomi tell her to do? No, more than that. What'd she tell her to wear? Her finest things, and then go lay on the ground. So we get that point, yeah. Then remember, the other thing that's going to happen is we're going to talk about the birthright. So does anybody remember what the birthright that they're talking about was all about?
Inheriting property, or
no, this had to do with Ruth herself. In those days, if an heir dies, then somebody from that heir's family has to marry the widow to maintain. So that's called the birthright. Well, there's going to be an issue about the birthright. In fact, we find out that the other individual's name is not really mentioned, but.
Well, there's somebody else that likes her other than that Boaz guy.
Right, yeah. There is one other person that has, is first in line, okay?
He doesn't want to take the deal.
Well, let's put it this way. Let's find out if he wanted to take the deal. So if somebody could read Ruth chapter 4, verses 1 to 12.
I'm not reading anything.
1 to 12,
Yeah.
okay, let me see here. Meanwhile, Boaz went up to the town gate and sat down there, just as the guardian redeemer he had mentioned came along. Boaz said, "Come over here, my friend, and sit down." So he went over and sat down. Boaz took 10 of the elders of the town and said, "Sit here," and they did so. Then he said to the guardian redeemer, "Naomi, who has come back from Moab, is selling the piece of land that belonged to our relative Elimelech. I thought I should bring the matter to your attention and suggest that you buy it in the presence of these seated here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, so do so. But if you will not, tell me, so I will know. For no one has the right to do it except you, and I am next in line." "I will redeem it," he said. Then Boaz said, "On the day you buy the land from Naomi, you also acquire Ruth the Moabite, the dead man's widow, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property." At this, the guardian redeemer said, "Then I cannot redeem it, because I might endanger my own estate. You redeem it yourself, I cannot do it." Now, in earlier times in Israel, for the redemption and transfer of property to become final, one party took off his sandal and gave it to the other. This was a method of legalizing transactions in Israel. So the guardian redeemer said to Boaz, "Buy it for yourself," and he removed his sandal. Then Boaz announced to the elders and all the people, "Today you are witnesses that I have bought from Naomi all the property of Elimelech, Kilian, and Mahlon. I have also acquired Ruth the Moabite, Mahlon's widow, as my wife, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property, so that his name will not disappear from among the family or from his hometown. Today you are witnesses." Then the elders and all the people of the gate said, "We are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming Rachel and Leah, who together build up the family of Israel. May you have standing in Ephrathah and be famous in Bethlehem. Through the offspring of the Lord gives you by this young woman, may your family be like that of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah. A lot in there, lots in there,
Lots of names.
lots of
Aha,
information. Right?
So, when you see this transaction take place, okay, sounded kind of civil, didn't it?
Yeah.
Once he found out all what came along with it, he decided, I'm not gonna do this, and keep that in mind. So, what's that?
I have a question. How would it endanger his own estate?
That depends on how you look at it. There are some who believe that the fact that Ruth did what she did would have brought disfavor onto his estate if he had married her, because after all, she went for the other guy.
Well, this here says also, possibly he fears that if he has a son by her, and if that son is his only surviving heir, his own property will transfer to the family of Elimelech.
Yeah, that's the other part of it. So there were two parts of it. The reason I'm bringing this up is we're going to get to this here shortly.
This isn't very romantic.
No.
But if he has a son, why isn't it still?
Because there's other families, there's first cousins, second cousins, they might want his property, even.
Yeah, but he said he would have had his son, so why wouldn't he?
Yeah,
have
it's
his
just
son?
it's again, this is the line, okay? He would lose the line, is what would happen. So, I mean, it's a very big deal. You remember begats and begots. That's how they identified people. But there's also a theory that the fact that she did what she did made it very clear to him that this ain't gonna work. If she's involved, it ain't gonna work. So either way, those were the two factors that probably entered into it. And also, as I said, land was a very important thing back then because nobody really had any money. You know, they basically bartered everything. And they were all landowners. I mean, there was no industrial types going on, so they sold crops to each other and livestock to each other and all that sort of thing.
And they had 10 elders there too.
So that was to make things legal.
Yeah. Judges.
So anyway, that's how the two of them got together. And now, here's the good part. Why all of this got included? So would somebody like to read chapter 4 from 13 to the end of the chapter?
So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. Then he went to her, and the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. The woman said to Naomi, "Praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a kinsman redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons, has given him birth." Then Naomi took the child, laid him in her lap, and cared for him. The women living there said, "Naomi has a son," and they named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. This then is the family line of Perez. Perez was the father of Hezron, Hezron the father of Ram, Ram the father of Amminadab, Amminadab the father of Nasham, Nasham the father of Salmon, Salmon the father of Boaz, Boaz the father of Obed, Obed the father of Jesse, and Jesse the father of David.
So, when it comes to King David, who is Ruth?
And great
someone.
Boaz was listed there, and then after that was Jesse, and then David.
And great
Boaz was her husband.
So
Yeah, but
great-grandmother,
what was Ruth to David?
great-grandmother?
Grandmother.
She's a grandmother. Yeah.
So, that's why this book was included. Ruth is David's grandmother. Not only that, but Ruth who is not from the faith when she was born, is David's grandmother. That is the story here. The fact, not so much that Ruth is, pardon me, not so much that Ruth is the grandmother, but Ruth, who wasn't in the faith, is the grandmother. So that's why this book was included. Because it's a forebear to the fact that God's kingdom includes everybody.
What does it mean by kinsman redeemer?
The head of the line, the people who will own and maintain the property, who will take care of the family. It's like being the patriarch.
Kind of like, you could be a distant relative, but you're their redeemer, guardian redeemer, because that's your position. So you can have distant relatives that you're helping, or helping them buy land, helping them sell land, or whatever.
Right, he's, like I say, he's like the patriarch of the family. In Italian terms, he's like Don Corleone. So basically that's the way things were in those days. Now, you say, well, that's all well and good, now that we know that. Well, actually, you already knew it. If everybody would turn to, let me find you here. Can't stop my sinuses from draining today. Turn to page, that's good. Great, it's the only one that has a name, but it doesn't have a page number. The first chapter, the first page of Matthew, which is on page 1007 thereabouts, it doesn't have a page number. It's right after the blank page that says New Testament on it. Okay? Would somebody like to read Matthew chapter 1 verses 2 to 6? A lot of names in there.
Abraham was the father of Isaac, Isaac the father of Jacob, Jacob the father of Judah and his brothers, Judah the father of Perez and Zerah, whose mother was Tamar, Perez the father of Hezron, Hezron the father of Ram, Ram the father of Amminadab, Amminadab the father of Nahshon, Nahshon the father of Salmon, Salmon the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rehab, Boaz the father of Obed, whose mother was Ruth, Obed was the father of Jesse, and Jesse the father of King David.
Okay. Now, remember, who is Rahab?
The prostitute.
Yeah, go on.
She helped save Israel when they had problems or were trying to get into another country or.
Well, she was the one that got involved with the spies
Yeah.
and lowered the spies out over the wall in a basket. So Boaz's mother was not of the faith, and Boaz's wife was not of the faith. An even better story.
Now, in this book of Ruth, did they give Naomi the child to raise, or was that just, it doesn't really say for sure. Did Naomi raise Ruth's child?
No, it doesn't say for sure, and
She may have.
she may have. That's some mother-in-laws like to do that. Now, what's that?
She's still living.
Oh yeah, she's yeah.
Because in the Bible, it
Except for babies,
says, in the Bible it says that the woman gave it to Naomi and said, "This is Naomi's son now."
Right, but it's just a typical grandma thing, you know.
Well,
Remember that, Leon, remember that. It's a typical grandma
Speaking
thing.
of which, how's Kristen doing?
Ready for her baby to come, baby's not ready yet.
Yeah.
Baby doesn't come by the 31st, baby will be ready to come.
You might be born on Easter, huh?
Well, anyway,
He's getting big.
all of you know that Thursday morning on one of the off channels on cable, the story of Ruth the movie was played, because you all watched it. But here are 2 reviews of that movie. Now, you've read the book. Let's see what you think about this first one. These are done by 2 different people. And read the first one and see what you think. Just tell me what you think is,
We got it.
We're good.
tell me what you think about what it says. And what's there and what's not there and all that other good fun stuff.
I read very fast.
Yeah, I know. But,
This was on this last week?
you know, no, it's a 1960 movie, but,
Okay. No, I turn on some of those, whatever you wanna call those channels. Usually it's just people talking.
yeah, well, this
Last
was,
night, yesterday, it was, oh, maybe.
it's the one on my cable, it's right next to Turner Classic Movies. But anyway, naturally, we learned everything that's on this sheet, right? It was all in the book. What part of it wasn't in the book? What part of it wasn't in the book?
There was really no description of what Ruth's husband and
They didn't say how he died.
father and
Yeah.
brother-in-law, none of them were really talked about much.
What did it say about Ruth?
It says that she falls in love with Boaz.
And she
And
was
that isn't really the way I read it.
Yeah, well,
And she says she's a pagan idolatress, is that,
Yeah.
I don't remember that part either.
yeah.
kind of starting to doubt her faith in her idols.
Mhm. Well, that we know is true. But what about the last sentence? One of the best Bible-based movies ever made in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Which puts it right up there with the 10 Commandments and the robe and all those other ones, right? So you notice there's a few things in here that the book never really said.
Yeah.
Here is another review, same movie. And let's see what you think about this one. Same movie. Can't count to 4 today. And there you go. Now let's see, let's go this way. All right. I guess that same movie. 2 different people.
Extra.
Well, now what do we know about Ruth?
child sacrifice.
Yeah, no, we read that, we read that in the book of Ruth somewhere, right? No? I saw, in the actual movie, that's how the movie starts, there's like these, and they're all girls, by the way, that get dishonored. You know, they're all girls, and they're all dressed the same and everything, and they're, it's like a dog show, you know, like, yeah, and, so they found a blemish, so she didn't get sacrificed, and was really upset about it, crying and everything. And not only that, the sacrifice has to give a speech.
Before she gets killed?
Yeah.
Sounds like a really weird situation.
Isn't there some place in the Bible about a woman and she was looked over because of a blemish? I thought you had mentioned that in one of the classes.
I'll have to check that one out. Yeah, that's possible. But so now then the story gets even more interesting. Ruth grows up to be the priestess, like the first movie review said. And so she gets to attend these things. And she gets to know one of the girls that's next in line. And she really is upset that this girl is going to end up doing this. So she's standing there with all the other priestesses who are dressed exactly the same. Exactly the same. And when the guy's going to put the knife in her, she cries and runs out, and as a result gets arrested. They find out that she's messing around with a Jewish guy, and the Jewish guy ends up becoming a prisoner, and somehow they escape. But he dies during the escape. Okay, so it mentions in there, Ruth and her mother-in-law don't escape from Moab as much as they just left. Well, in the movie, the two of them are on the run. And this high priest is sending all these guards to find her. And you had to see this scene. It's the most ridiculous thing you ever saw. Here's this, like, hill. Ruth and Naomi are walking with two burros on one side. The king's guards are coming on the other on horses. So they leave the two burros there and they hide at the base of the hill, and the king's guards go right by without even seeing. Okay. Now, as it turns out, the king's guards decide to kill a few people along the way.
But it's movies.
Yeah, and guess who shows up for vengeance? Who in the story would show up for vengeance?
Maybe the second brother?
No, Boaz does.
Boaz does. He's the hero.
Yeah, he's the hero. So he shows up for vengeance, and he kind of meets him for the first time and doesn't pay much attention to him, gives them water and sends them on their way. So according to Hollywood, this is how this whole thing went. And then it also mentions all the racist and religious hatred of Ruth by the Judeans was completely fictional. A good part of the movie was everybody accusing Ruth of everything. I mean, everything you could possibly think of. From the famine to, kids dying, to all kinds of things. It's all her fault. None of this would have happened if she had never come here. And she's on trial, and she admits to all these bad things that she did. Then they had these two guys come in who were supposed to be the witnesses, who turned out to be lying through their teeth. So the townspeople go after them, and they leave Ruth alone. And then there's the other Redeemer, by the way. There's a scene with him. Remember in the Bible, it was kind of a civil thing with the elders and everything? Mm-hmm. That's not the way it was in the movie. The way it was in the movie, he decides he's going to redeem his thing, and he's going to redeem Ruth with it, and they're going to have a wedding, and sends over a dress. So she's ready, she's all ready to go, and they're about to get married. I'm telling you, this is the way it was. And they're about to get married, and then she says, I don't really love you. Well, you'll learn to love me, like that. like in the old days, you know, with the royal weddings and stuff. And so then she said, so I was telling you, remember I told you all these bad things. Oh, that doesn't matter to me. And he says, yeah, but I was with Boaz on the threshing floor. All the people are going crazy, and he gets so mad. He says, well, I can't afford to have that stain on my family name. And he takes off his sandal, he throws it at Boaz's head. So the last scene of the movie is they decide to have a wedding, except this time it's going to, you know, Boaz steps in at the last minute, and they get married. That's the end of the story.
My great-grandparents, one set of great-grandparents, did not marry for love or anything. She was taking care of his mother. His mother had been an invalid for maybe years, and finally he said, my mother needs care 24 hours a day. Will you marry me? So he got married. There was no love or anything.
But did they end up loving each other?
I don't know. It was kind of a strange marriage too. She took off and left with my grandfather one. Yeah. So anyhow, but they didn't marry for love.
Well, in the old days, sometimes people didn't marry for love. They married
I
because
need
of
to take care of my mother 24 hours a day.
Yeah, they were arranged marriages, you know.
Well, read The Pride and Prejudice and see how that used to work.
You know, they had arranged
So
marriages.
it was just like, well, he wanted her to take care of his mother 24 hours a day. She was about the same size as me. My great grandmother.
Well, what I really want you to do is look at that the sentence that says, I really wish in hindsight that the film had been all fiction and they hadn't bothered with the root tie-in at all. The fictional stuff was more interesting.
And like Indiana Jones or something, huh?
So, in other words, what she's saying is the book of Ruth is boring.
And it's short.
It's short and it's boring. So they had to spice it up to make you watch the movie.
But they do that for everything.
Oh yeah, I know.
Almost everything, yeah.
But,
I mean, I can read a whole book, and truthfully, you don't need the sex part. It has nothing to do with the book,
yeah.
but they put it in because that's what people want.
Well, you just spend a lot of money making a movie. The only way you make your money back is people go see it.
Right, right.
And but think about this. They made a lot of this stuff up. And the first review said, oh, this is a great movie, it's a must-see. The second review says, I wish they had thrown Ruth out, just left the rest of it. I mean...
But see, a lot of people believe the Bible's just not made up too, you know.
You see, the problem is, the whole story is the fact that Ruth is an outsider who ends up on the inside because she takes care of her mother-in-law and she's really a good person and ends up becoming David's grandmother.
That's why it's in the Bible.
And that's why it's in the Bible. But who's going to watch that in a film? The answer is nobody. You know, unless the film is like $1 or something like that. Or in my case, we had to see A Man for All Seasons when we were in school. We didn't have a choice. You remember Man for All Seasons, right?
I never saw it. So.
Well, you had to go all the way to downtown Chicago to watch it. It was about Sir Thomas More.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, we also had to go down and see The Greatest Story Ever Told.
No, that one I've seen. That one I've seen.
Who played Jesus?
I don't remember.
Max von Sydow,
Oh.
of all people.
Yeah.
So anyway, the point of the matter is, the reason it was put in the Bible was not to entertain you. The reason it was put in the Bible is because it connects things. And we have a bad habit of whenever we turn things over to Hollywood, things become a little different. I don't know if it's going to be the case this year. Excuse me. But every year, it seems, on the Saturday before Easter, somebody runs the 10 Commandments. Okay? It turns out that a good part of the 10 Commandments is made up, even though when you watch it, the first panel board says, this is based on the Jewish historian Josephus and, in big letters, the Holy Bible. First of all, if you recall the story of Moses, he gets called at the burning bush. Why doesn't he want to go?
Afraid of God?
Well, part of it, but there is also one thing he tries to tell God to hopefully get him out of it.
Yeah, he doesn't speak well.
Exactly.
Yep, I don't speak well.
Moses stuttered. Somehow the writer of that movie never got that, did he? Charlton Heston, I don't recall ever stuttering 1 second
He wouldn't have done it anyway.
in the movie. Not only that, Aaron was told, God said, Aaron will do all your talking. I don't think Aaron talked once in that movie.
Yeah.
But again, you're trying to sell a movie. What's even more strange is John Derek was in that movie. You know who John Derek is, right?
Which character did he play?
He was Joshua. John Derek resurfaced again in the 80s.
Yeah, he married Bo Derek.
Yeah, he married Bo Derek. So stop and think. He's in a movie in 1952 when he's in his 30s. And he marries Bo Derek in the 80s.
Oh yeah, he married. She was young. He was old.
So, I mean, so...
But in a way, what sometimes a movie does do is, like, for example, you can read the Ten Commandments, and God sent a plague, and in the movie you can actually see what it means. The plague was a terrible thing, a lot of people died, or the snake was a terrible thing, or the firstborn child, and you can really imagine how important the firstborn child was, instead of just reading it. Yeah, that was really nice.
Yeah.
Firstborn child died. So the way movies do give you
Right.
a better picture of what really
Yeah.
Some
Yeah.
biblical
You can see it.
perspective.
It makes it easier to
to understand.
visualize.
Yeah.
Well, have you, how many of you have seen the Ten Commandments?
Oh, sure.
I've seen it.
What did the angel of death look like?
I
It
don't
was
know.
a smoke that came along the ground, and every time it touched somebody, they died. It had to have been dry ice. I can't think of any other way they would have done it. And when Aaron touches the staff, and all of a sudden it turns to blood, and all of a sudden you could see it going all the way out into the Nile. And I mean, just you're right. It does make it more real.
Yeah.
It does make it more real. But again, they have to make it so that it will appeal to an audience.
Yeah.
Do you think the Passion of the Christ is more accurate? They don't show it anymore.
Well, they don't show it anymore because supposedly it was when I discussed this with some people, they said it's based on words in the Bible from people who were actually there. And there's much, and he went through a lot of trouble. I mean, after all, he did it in Hebrew. The version I saw was totally in Hebrew. And you had subtitles. And
I don't think that's the one. That's one she's talking about.
The one that,
the one that,
You're talking the one with Mel Gibson?
yeah,
Now
that's, he did, the one version of his that I saw was in Hebrew.
No, not the one in.
Not on TV, no.
Not on TV.
Not on TV.
They wouldn't
When I
make-
saw it in the theater, it was in Hebrew.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't.
But you don't think that it was more accurate?
He tried to be.
I heard it was supposed to be accurate. I don't know.
Everything he does is, he tries to be accurate on.
I think, again, some of it he probably over-dramatized and gave a certain effect for the evil and things like that, more so than maybe with the real, but he tried.
Yeah, well, that. There's a lot to that. Look at when he played William Wallace. Anybody who watched that movie and saw how he died, absolutely, most people have to turn it off.
Is that from the, he was I'll say a Highlandsman, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the one.
That's the one. I don't know. Remember the name of it?
Yeah.
I've seen that
Broken
one.
Heart or something like that?
Yeah, Braveheart.
Braveheart, yeah.
Braveheart.
They
So,
stretch him and kill him.
Yeah, so, you know, there's a lot of people who go through a lot of trouble to be accurate, and Gibson's one of them. His portrayal of the Patriot is actually based on a lot of real events. The battle that takes place where they win was actually the Battle of Cowpens. So there's a lot of truth, but again, you have to make it so that people will watch it.
So why won't they show it?
Well, actually, you know, what was it anybody ever see The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the last line in that movie? When the legend is better than the truth, print the legend.
Right. That's right.
And there's a lot of people who have done that.
I know they show King of Kings
Yeah.
a lot for Easter.
Oh, yeah.
Same story.
And, well, Ben-Hur.
Ben-Hur was just on. I've never seen it, but it was on, just on.
Well, how does Ben-Hur start? What's the subtitle?
I don't know. It was just.
Ben-Hur, A Story of the Christ.
And Brian likes Spartacus too.
Supposedly he was real.
Yeah. Well, that one I've seen. A long time ago.
Now again, it depends on how real is real. I mean, the movie V. Rudy that everybody loved. There were so many things in there that were not historically accurate, to the point where the coach that they described as a bad guy really wasn't like that, and he had all kinds of problems after he saw that film.
Well, they're always suing them now because they're finding out when they do make the movies that they're really not accurate. And then the person that they're doing it about goes back and sues all these people.
I mean, stuff
Yeah.
like bios.
Yeah, you know.
So basically, there's a lot of, you know, the question is, what's the intent of making the film in the first place? Why did they pick the story of Ruth? Well, they must have known that the story of Ruth is short and doesn't have a lot going on. But like it mentions in the reviews, he said the writers did a lot of research and filled in, the stuff they filled in was accurate for the time. Now, whether it actually happened in Ruth's life is another story. But that's the trouble with some of these films that you see. You know, especially the Hollywood biopics, especially the lavish ones. For example, in the Ten Commandments, Nefertiti wears a dress that's blue. Apparently, blue didn't exist in those days. But she looks great in it. There's also the one about Samson that they kind of stretched just a bit. You know who the female star in Samson was, don't you?
Glory, is there glory to heaven?
Mhm.
Yeah, well, actually, the other one was Angela Lansbury.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, oh
She
yeah.
was a pretty girl.
She was real pretty when she was
Yeah,
young.
so, but anyway, I wanted you to see that these movie reviews are saying, took the basic text and then stretched it this way, that way, that way, that way, and that way. And they made it in such a good, such an interesting way that one of the reviewers said it's a must-see. Even though it's not the other one says it's not even close to historically accurate for most of it.
Do you think that they serve a purpose though, meaning that for someone who may not have a Christian background, at least it gives them some subtext? And if you are a Christian, it would, like you said, it kind of gives you a visual.
Right.
Right.
More of a big-
Well, that's the purpose it serves. I mean, there's no question about that. Now, the other part of the thing I didn't tell you was only one person in the story of Ruth spoke with an accent. Who was it? Ruth herself. And she's this Moabite that's supposedly the foreigner. In reality, she was Israeli. And that was her accent. So she was the only one speaking like the rest of them should have been. I mean, Stuart Whitman is not going to have an accent like that. You know?
It's just like in the old movies, sometimes you watch them now and you're an adult and you know more things and you're like, those people don't look like American Indians at all. they were like Spanish, or they weren't, or they were like Ricardo Montalban, an American Indian, no. But anyway, they just had a lot of.
Well, the most famous actor for Indigenous American is Anthony Quinn.
He was a good actor, but.
Oh, he played anything. He was a Filipino. He was an Indigenous American actor. He played Zeus. Come on. Anyway, the reason I point all this out to you is that you asked about the canon earlier. That's what these guys were looking at when they looked at these books. You know, should we include it or not include it? Well, let's include Ruth because she becomes the grandfather of David. Grandmother of David. Then what we'll do is we'll put that book between the judges and the kings. So now she becomes the transition, if you will, from one of the people that transitions them from the judges to the kings. Which is why that little book is stuck where it is. And it was not an accident. They knew exactly, they want this to read, at that part of the Bible, they wanted it to read like a narrative. Like that's why they call it the historical books, which start out from the early days and continue to move forward. Well, that's where you would put her, if that's what you did. Now, then when we get back, we're going to talk about Esther. Esther had a lot of intrigue. There was a lot they should have made a movie about her. She was a lot of fun, and there was all kinds of side stories and shall we say treachery. He's into treachery.
Have you ever seen it on television?
I don't know if they made it. If they made it, I don't think they are. I've seen it.
The same way they do those plays. Like,
Yeah.
I know you have to go up like PA.
Yeah.
But they had Queen Esther.
Yeah.
She's the one that was the Jewish queen.
Right.
Right. Well, they did have that on television.
Yeah. Like I said, her story is really something, and we're going to get into that and see why that matters, because it reflects on the question Dave asked some weeks ago.